Today's session we're going to is about exploring the spring release for 2024.1 release that's due to be. Our clients will start going through the upgrade process over the next couple of months to get up to speed onto that program. So yeah, let's kick off. Okay, so the key topics that we're going to focus on today is just giving you an understanding of the process or the upgrade process that we've been refining here at AlphaBiz, and just explain the steps that we go through in the upgrade process, just to make sure that we're covering off the best practices with our clients. For some of our clients, the upgrade process is pretty simple, but we do want to verify and make sure that you are having a smooth experience through that upgrade. So we have sort of built a little bit of a benchmark when it comes to the best practices in doing that. And it is something that we've been refining over the last few years. And then the team are going to go through and give you some highlights of what's available in the new release. Now, obviously we have a mixture of clients that are attending today. Some of this may be relevant, some of it may not, but don't tune out. It is important that we just go through those items. Some of them might be that certain modules that you're not using at the moment, you might see some interest in that. And then basically go through some of so not just enhancements, but also some of the bug issues that have been resolved in this session. These sessions are for you guys, for our clients. So at any point, if you've got any questions or queries that you want, you do have the ability to unmute yourself and be interactive with us. If not, as I did last session, I'll name a few to point out, and so that we get a bit of an interaction as well. So these sessions that we've been running since around about, I think this is about our 5th or 6th session that we've run over since last year. These sessions are all about how to unlock Acumatica to try and get more power out of the system. Some of them I think we did one just recently. It was more about our support process and going through how support works and how to interact best with support. But these are all about, it is about unlocking Acumatica. So there'll be other sessions that we'll be running this year that will, focus in on finance, field services, production, supply chain, and projects, and sales order processes as well. We'll also highlight some of the independent software vendors that we work with as well. We've had a session last year on Trailed. We've got one coming up shortly with ProSpend as well. And then also we'll start highlighting some of our add-ons that we have in market as well. So we've got AlphaLink, which is a middleware component that we offer to a lot of clients, where they may need integration into other independent software vendors that don't integrate with MYOB yet. And we are getting a lot of traction and interest at the moment with AlphaPod, which is our proof of delivery system. And that can be used for our clients in the distribution space for pickups at their location, or it can also be used for deliveries as well. So we are finding a lot of traction at the moment with our AlphaPod program. And if you do see any of these and want to query about them, or want to know more about some of the modules that you saw on the last screen, reach out to me and I'm happy to engage with that. So today, obviously, we're going to have, you got myself, Adam, and then we've got Janella, who's our team leader of support, will be presenting a little bit later. And then Mark will also be presenting a lot of new features that are coming into the program. So today's main objective is really to address some of the product fixes and and also showcase some of the new features that are coming, and also just by just being interactive with our customers and sharing some of the things that we go through in our support process with clients. How to get more out of the platform, how to get better interaction with that platform. So first, I thought I'd just explain the AlphaBiz upgrade process that we've been refining over the years. So, and just give you a little bit more insight about how we interact with MYOB and so on from that process. So MYOB do have two to three upgrade windows a year. So two of those upgrades are typically just necessary bug fixes, and they don't have major impact, and they happen outside of happen outside of hours, and basically sort of run in the background for a lot of our clients. But they do typically have one major upgrade a year, and that's where a lot of the new features that are coming into the program. And this is where we think it is absolutely essential that we get a sandbox for all of our clients to try and get them to do testing, and we all testing on the sandbox environment to make sure that things aren't going to go astray if there's been any customizations in your system. But for a lot of our clients, it is simple. We haven't had to overly customize their site, so it is a simple upgrade process. But we still need our clients to go through that process. So what happens is MYOB have a portal that we are regularly checking to give us the information about when the upgrade windows are coming for our clients, and so we are regularly checking on those windows. Now, because of it being a cloud-based program, MYOB obviously are putting those dates out and doing those upgrades. So we do make contact with our clients and let them know that, hey, you've got a major upgrade coming, and as much as MYOB don't want us to defer too often, but if there is, if there's going to be implications where it could be a really busy period for you to do, and the upgrade isn't going to be the most appropriate for you at that time, we cannot sometimes ask to defer the upgrade schedule for you to a later date to avoid, sort of peak periods and so on. Or if there's anything that we find that in the system is, not going to be, absolutely accurate, or and there's maybe some support issues that we need to raise with MYOB, we can also ask to defer the upgrades at that point. But what happens from that is we then once we get notification about the date, we start preparing for that date. And about a month before that, we will get a sandbox environment that we can play around with and actually do some testing. So what we do is once we get access to the sandbox, we'll start doing some preliminary testing on there to make sure. And these are just sort of your day-to-day processes. It doesn't have to be too, you don't have to start trying to test new features that you're not going to be using in the release notes. It's more about you just going through your day-to-day processes and doing those in the actual test environment. But we'll do some of the testing, making sure that sales orders, purchase orders, all those sort of things are working correctly in the system. But we do ask our clients, and we'll give them a checklist to, to send over to you to do some testing. It is important that, we do believe it's important that you go through that checklist and make sure that you've done some testing as well and sign off on it, so that we'll just identify if there's any issues that we do identify in there, or if we need to clarify anything with you of maybe like a new feature that's come in and how to use that, we can do that in the test environment, so that when it comes to the upgrade process, it's a smooth transition for you. So what happens? So on the day of the upgrade, we will also be in contact with our clients with a friendly reminder to a couple of days before, we'll come up with a friendly reminder just to let you know that, your upgrade's coming in a couple of days. There is also in-product messages that do pop up for administration users and stuff like that. But we do also try and obviously keep on track of that communication with you and make sure that you're across that upgrade is coming. And typically what we do ask is that make sure that all users are out by 5 p.m. And saved any work and all that sort of stuff to make sure that there's nothing that's going to be lost. But at 5 p.m, MYOB will start automating their upgrade process overnight. And then basically from there, we've moved to the next point. We go through a few activities post-upgrade. So if there's any customizations in your system, we'll make sure that they're operational. If we need to republish them, we do that first thing in the morning. So the team do arrive at 6 a.m. in the morning, Australian Western Standard Time. So they'll arrive and start republishing any customizations, and just make sure that the site's actually accessible and there's nothing gone wrong. So that's the upgrade process, and that's how we sort of manage it. And we've, as I say, refined it over the years to make it more interactive with our clients. But basically, we'll go through also today what's coming in the new product release, and give you a little bit of highlights about some of those key features. But last year, I did do a presentation to my EXO clients on Acumatica, and that was around about April last year. And the year before that, there was 675 new features that were released into the Myer Acumatica program. Some of those might just be really subtle features that you just sort of pick up and notice as you start using the new version. Some of those are more major. So today, what we would like to go through is just going through those for you. So yeah, so some of the new top features that are coming in there, and some of those are really exciting. And I'm gonna hand over to Mark to sort of go through a bunch of those, and then Janella will also take over and talk through sort of the production and MRP side of things. But basically, there's some really exciting features coming for our clients that are working in the that are a wholesale and distribution space around this distribution requirements planning. So this is all about inventory planning and how to best get more information and more control over not only just what are my min maxes and stuff like that, but also what is the planning that goes behind that that's just a little bit more intricate than just the standard min max side of things. There's also some ability to reverse cash purchases documents to try and streamline that process, and the ability to do reversals in field services. There's also a lot more coming to projects in regards to the pro forma billing side of things, reporting operations out of sequence for MRP, and there's also a lot of enhancements coming for the MRP. And Janella's really excited about the general inquiries part of it. So what I'll do now is just hand over to Mark, and I'll let him take you through some of the new features.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining this session today. And thanks, Adam, for the wonderful introduction and giving about a bit of an overview of the upgrade process. So today's webinar is primarily going to focus on those seven topics mentioned by Adam. So I'm going to discuss first around DRP. So if you go on to the next slide, please. So what is DRP? So it stands for Distribution Requirements Planning. So with this feature enabled, it will provide suggestions to buy, make, or transfer order with the goal of preventing companies from running out of inventory or having too much inventory based on multiple sources of demand. It also considers lead time, to ensure having stocks just in time to avoid delays. So this will be very helpful for businesses that need to stay on top of inventory management. And absolutely, this feature is a game changer. So let's see how it works on this screenshot. So it shows a forecast of 100 keyboard on a monthly basis. So with DRP, the system will then give me a supply plan that will help me understand when I need to purchase these items in order to have them just in time to meet the forecast. So like I said, to avoid delays, this DRP will consider the lead time. So if you go on to the next slide, please. Let's take a look at another DRP example where an item is transferred from a different warehouse. So in this screenshot, we set up an item from a wholesale warehouse with the safety stocks of 15 laptops, as you can see. It also, so with DRP, it will suggest to transfer the 15 laptops. Sorry, if you go into the, oh yeah, sorry, there's just some delay in it. So another DRP example where an item is transferred from a different warehouse. So here, as I said, we set up an item from a wholesale warehouse with a safety stock of 15 laptops and a lead time of 7 days. So with DRP, the system will then suggest to transfer the laptops from the wholesale warehouse anytime our inventory drops below 15 laptops. So if you go on to the next slide, Janella. Now let's take a look at inventory planning display, or our DRP display. So it is telling us to purchase, transfer, or assemble kits based on demand. So we can use DRP to purchase across multiple warehouses as well as stated in the screen, and also to understand what documents are actually driving these demands. So if you go on to the next slide, let's filter out some items. So here, I filtered out our transferred item in the previous screenshot. So on the last line item, as you can see, Acumatica is letting us know that we need to transfer 15 laptops from wholesale warehouse to the retail warehouse. On the second line item, it is also telling us that in the wholesale warehouse, we need to purchase 15 laptops to meet the demand of the retail warehouse. And on the first line item, as you can see, Acumatica is also telling us to purchase these 15 laptops to meet the safety stock of the wholesale warehouse. So that's all based from our source of demand, which was the transferred example earlier. So that's it. Like I said, before you plan inventory, you will need to regenerate inventory planning to refresh these sources of demands or the transactions created earlier. So regeneration of inventory planning or DRP should typically be run overnight or on a schedule. So with DRP, you will have one centralized location where you can view supply and replenishment suggestions based on multiple sources of demand. This feature will help those companies that need the same level of inventory tracking as manufacturers, but without the need of being in a manufacturing edition. So, but this DRP, just note that this feature will be available in Acumatica, but there are some relevant configuration that needs to be discussed to you guys or within our clients. And then afterwards, our consultants might have to, import some item level on inventory planning setup. There's also training involved, and lastly, there will be a support. So if you want to enable this DRP feature, you have to enable it from the enable and disable features in Acumatica. But as I said, consultant is needed to configure that. So going on to the next feature, Janella. The next feature is I'm going to discuss about having the ability to reverse cash purchases. Like Adam was mentioning, cash purchase is not always applicable to some companies, but some cash purchase in payables um, is used to record purchases or services where payment is being made immediately. And as such, there's no liability being raised and assigned to supplier account. Okay, so if you look at this screenshot, um, prior to 2024.1 version, Acumatica only allows users to void these cash purchase for returns or refund. That is because there's no option to return or correct the cash purchase. But with 2024.1 version, sorry, just go back to the slide, please. Yeah. So users will have the ability to return cash purchases to create full or partial refund for items that are paid for immediately. Um, in the screenshot we presented in the screen, we've purchased 4 printer toners from Alphabis, but we decided to return one item. But previously we would have to void this transaction and create a new one. But what if I just want to return one item? So if you go to the next slide, then now with 2024.1 version, users will have the ability to return this cash purchase to create a full or a partial refund for items that are paid for immediately. So as you can see, there's a button for return now. Before it was just void. So if you go into the next slide, so once the return has been released, you can drill down into the journal behind that document, which is on this screenshot. And you can see that it has reversed the portion of expense and take and taxes and refunded the cash to our bank account. So that's it. That new feature is quicker and easier to manage these type of transactions. It'll be ideal for industrials like retails or those companies with frequent cash transactions and returns, reducing errors and speeding up their financial process. So moving on to our next feature, please. So I'm gonna talk about reversing a service invoice in the field services management. So previously, we are required to correct sales order invoice, such as reopening the field services document to make changes. We have to re-invoice it. We have to create a credit memo. Um, we also have to enter those line details that needs to be added. So all of those are manual. And after you created credit memos, you will then have to apply that to the invoice. So those processes are cumbersome from a user perspective. It is very time consuming and prone to errors at the same time. In 2024.1 version, My Acumatica has simplified the process of managing these type and managing corrections and cancellations of sales invoices linked to our service documents as seen on this screenshot. So this means that when an invoice needs to be corrected, My Acumatica will allow the users to reverse sales invoice with a single click, and it automatically creates a credit memo with all the details of the original sales invoice. So in this screenshot, here's an example of appointment where a customer called saying we billed them with the wrong amount. Okay, so on the billing documents tab, there is a sales invoice tagged into this appointment when we run the billing. So if you go into the screenshot, we'll take a look at the invoice link to it. If you go into the next slide, Janella. So let's take a look at this sales invoice link to the previous screenshot for the appointment. With this upcoming feature, users will now have the ability to reverse the service invoice by just clicking on the action toolbar and reverse the service invoice instead of having to create a credit memo. Applying it to the invoice, reopen service document, re-invoice it again and enter line details that are needed. If you go on to the next slide, Janella. So once you reverse that, as a result, the invoice was canceled out. You can see on the second line, and the credit memo was applied automatically. Very simple, just reversing that um, transaction in a single click. Then the users, can just unclose this appointment, make some changes, and run the billing again, and that's it. Very easy. So that enhanced the workflow, having accuracy and reliability on our reversal process. So it avoids prone, it avoids the users to having prone to errors. So if you go into the next feature, Janella. So I'm going to talk about enhancement around projects. So it's actually enhanced performance. So this new feature on performa billing targets construction and project-based businesses. Let's take a look at this screenshot. In this example, we can see that the invoice amount is 93,000. So the invoice, performa invoice number 59, and we've got the invoice number 43. However, the customer found some discrepancies for this invoice. Let's say a 3,000 discrepancy, so we need to make some changes. Previously, a user would have to create a credit memo to reverse the invoice. And will need to manually apply it to the original invoice, which was very inefficient and clunky. So if you go into the next slide, Chanela. Yep. So with this new version, the process has been streamlined, and as the automation now takes care of the creation of the new AR invoice and AR credit memo. So in this example, I hit the correct on the action toolbar and corrected the finishes, let's say finishes task, because we were not complete as we thought we were. And after making some changes on the finishes task, amounting from 93,000 to 90,000, I saved this document and took the transaction off hold and release it. So if you go on to the next slide. So after releasing that transaction, the system creates a credit memo, which automatically applied to our original invoice, as you can see on the last line. And then there's a second line for the credit memo. So we can see that this automation has created a new pro forma invoice as well on the first line, and that's for the adjusted amount. So that's going to be sitting on balance. That's for the users to review and just release when they're ready to be processed. So that's it. So that correction is part of the upcoming upgrade. It helps, maintain clean financial records and ensures that project finances are managed within a minimal friction. So next feature, if you go into the next slide, Janella, is the reporting operations out of sequence. So this is another key update for manufacturing businesses. Um, it has the ability to report operations out of sequence as the name implies. So in the previous version, users did not have the ability to report operations in a non-sequential order if there are multiple operations in a production order. Reporting was always one operation after another. It was always sequential. So as an example, if you need to report operation number two, you have to report operation number one first. So that's a bit inefficient for workers in the production. With 2024.1 version, there's a new feature called automatic backward reporting. So this is introduced. So it allows non-sequential reporting of operation in production orders, with multiple operations, as I said. So this eliminates the need to manually document production transactions. This will be very beneficial to companies where they allow workers to report non-sequentially. But just note that this setting can only be overridden if the production order is not released. Okay, so if the production order is released, you cannot make some changes on this setting. Okay, let's take a look at this screenshot for our production order. So you'll see that there's a setting in production order maintenance called automatic backward reporting. So what does it mean? So once your site has been upgraded to 2024.1 version, this will automatically be ticked, meaning the reporting of operations will remain the same as the current version. So there will be no changes. But if that is ticked, with this new version, you have the ability to tick that. And how it works is the workers will have the um, capability to report completed operations non-sequentially, like I said, without the need to report the previous operations. So if you go on to the next slide, Janella. Okay. So I just went to it's the same production order, but I moved on to the events tab. So as you can see on this production order, I created a move transaction for the second operation. So the move transaction is on the last line and second to the last line as well. As you can see on the screenshot, I was able to report operation number two. If you take a look at the highlighted on the red box, but without the need to report, operation number one. And down that graph, you can also see that I was able to record my labor hours as well, just for that operation. So it means that if that is ticked, I can report non-sequentially without reporting the first task or the preceding operations. So that's it. It gives you the flexibility for, manufacturing workers to report those production operations when they are done and, non-sequentially instead of waiting for the preceding operation to be completed. So that's it for me. Janelle will discuss the next features about MRP enhancements, which targets the manufacturing industries, and some features around generic inquiries enhancement.
For this next topic that we'll be discussing is about the MRP or the Material Requirements Plan. Please note that this is only included for manufacturing and construction editions. So basically, we have some of our clients on board that have these editions already, and perhaps this would be able to help you also improve your processes. And yeah, all right, let's go ahead. First on the list is the forecast for stock and non-stock kit components. Earlier, this was not included, and with this inclusion to sales forecasting, it now would help you provide a more accurate demand planning. All right, okay, moving on. So there is also another feature about adding a planning horizon in your inventory planning. So basically, initially this is by default set as 0. So it means that when you generate your inventory plans, it includes everything without considering any additional days. So how does the inventory planning horizon field affects your MRP? So if ever this planning horizon field is set to 30 days. So if I have my SOs, POs, production orders, and transfer orders that go beyond 30 days, so this would now be excluded in my planning, in my inventory planning rather. Right. So the inventory regeneration process would now consider the supply and demand on or before the regeneration date, plus the number of days that you include in your planning horizon field as indicated in this one. All right. Next up is this new feature that you'd now be able to exclude inactive warehouses. So earlier, when you have inactive warehouses, these are considered in your supply and demand. So as you can see in here, when you inactivate a warehouse, it is now automatically removed from this inventory planning display. And with this exclusion, you would now have a more increased control over your demand planning, yeah, which provides now a more accurate forecasting. Right. Last but not the least, for the MRP enhancement is now the exclusion or inclusion of return orders. So there is this additional feature or field setting that is now included in the MRP, which also helps you have the ability to see available items more accurately, in that this would also prevent you from overestimating your available stock. So if you are not yet on manufacturing and construction editions and you would like to know more about MRP and how it would help you, please do contact support and we'd gladly book a meeting with you. All right. So this next feature that I will be discussing is one of the exciting parts of this coming upgrade. I personally would like generic inquiries within my Acumatica, and having this additional feature is very helpful, especially if you have a series of reports that you want to get out of it. So right now for this next feature, you can now use GIs as a source for creation of another GI. As you can see on this screenshot, so here, data sources, and source name, and then you have this generic inquiries. Previously, you can only use tables as a source for your GIs, and right now you'd now be able to use GIs as well. Right. So as you can see here in the screenshot that we have provided for you, is the GI is for a current ratio. Right at the bottom, you can see in the first two lines are two other sources. And these two sources, which is the financial ratio current assets and the financial ratio current liabilities, are both GIs. Next up here, these are now the product of those GIs. The first GI is a financial ratio, as you can see on top, and the one at the bottom is your current liabilities. When combined, and you can created this one as a source, you can now have a current ratio GI, as you can see on the left hand. So these GIs can also be included as a visualization on your dashboards, as you can see in this screen. So basically, there are so many things that this next upgrade is in store for you and would be very beneficial in your processes. I now hand over to Adam for the summary of the discussion. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Yeah. So look, obviously, it's just a brief overview of some obviously the new features that the support team get really, really excited about. They think it's their Christmases have come all at once when these releases come out. So, but they are exciting. So the distribution requirements planning, I think, is going to be a real game changer for a lot of our clients to get better control on the planning of their inventory requirements, and obviously plan out better. When best to order, when not best to order, and all that sort of stuff in regards to inventory planning. In regards to the sort of the reverse cash purchases, the service orders, and the enhancements to project pro forma billing, they're all about trying to remove the issue of having to go back in and do multiple transactions to make changes to the original. It's giving you that ability to go back in and just do corrections essentially. So avoiding, like if you've got a cash purchase, reverse cash purchase document that you have to do. At the moment, you've got to go and do a bunch of multiple steps to reverse it, or have to recreate it, to instead of just being able to modify that one transaction. So, those 3 items there that Mark went through, it's really just about trying to give you the ability to, be able to just do minor corrections and not have to completely get rid of the transaction or back the transaction out. And, in regards to the MRP side of things, that, we've got a few clients on the manufacturing process, so there's some highlights that we'll be running out to our clients. But, the generic inquiries one, a lot of the time, I hear clients say, I've got this generic inquiry and I have to take that one out to Excel and I have to take that one out to Excel to get what I want. That's a real game changer there, that you can be able to go and create a new generic inquiry quite quickly using, 2 current generic inquiries, which is a really exciting feature, instead of having to export to Excel and modify from there. And then, as Janella sort of said, dashboards, being able to just, then use that generic inquiry, that information onto a dashboard, is really, really good as well. And I think that's one thing for a lot of our clients, is that they've gone through the initial implementation, got, the basic reports, the financial reports up and running, and probably haven't spent a lot of time on dashboards and starting to enhance the general inquiry screens they've got at the moment. And that's where, look, we've got a team here to support you. Yes, if it's really, really complicated and we're going to have to spend a lot of time, it might be billable. If it's just us giving you a sort of quick how-to, if you said, okay, yeah, I like that feature, generic inquiries, call up support or log a case and say, yeah, I've got these generic inquiries, can you just give us a brief overview of how we can, do that? I'm sure Janella will, with bells on, will jump on a call, or Mark, and try and help you out with those, just showing you how to do it yourself. So it's not always that it has to be billable sort of work that we're looking for. It's actually trying to enhance your user experience of the system. We'll go on to the next slide, Janella. I think there's been some issues that we've been waiting to get resolved in the system, and I won't steal your thunder because I know this is probably, you've got a lot of clients that have been wanting these little fixes, but I'll hand back over to Janella quickly to go through these resolved issues.
All right, thank you, Adam. So, yep, with this next coming upgrade, there is a bunch of resolved issues, and we would just like to highlight these 3 items that have been consistently reported to us. So, first on the line is your files and attachments that are not showing previously on bills, or other GIs. So now for the next upgrade, this would now be fixed and would be now included on your next upgrade, as you can see on the screenshot. Another item is an issue with regards to the print and email AP remittance advice form. So earlier, there is an issue wherein this takes the default template and also the email address, instead of using the templates and email addresses that had been configured for each brand or for the site. So this would now also be included as a fix for your next upgrade. Another one is an issue constantly on bank feeds. So Mayab had added a fix for this, which is to easily add missing reference numbers to bank feed transactions. So basically, there are still a lot of areas that have been resolved. And usually when we send out notifications for upgrades, the team is also including the release notes for your reference and check and perhaps assist you with how Mayab had resolved issues that you may have encountered in the past. So, yep, thank you.
Know when the deployment and upgrade is going to occur. So I mean, this is something that we will be in contact with you guys to to let you know when the upgrade's coming for your site. These are staggered over the next couple of months, so it's not just the everyone at once that are our clients. It's staggered across for all clients on Mayab Acumatica. But yeah, I mean, Mark had been previously running the upgrade process, and he's handed it over to Jeremy now. So, but Mark oversees the upgrade process with Jeremy, and where they get more technical, he gets involved and helps out in that respect. We do send over the release notes once we have the affected date that you're going to have your upgrade. We'll send over the release notes sometimes, and we refer to it as 2024.1. The reason why we refer to it as 2024.1 is there may be some revisions that happen along the way. So we might end up with 2024.1.105. Whatever. And as we get the release notes for those different versions, we send those out to clients. So it might be that you get upgraded onto the 2024.1, but there may be a revision that might come in between that. And there may be some other things that need to be raised in those release notes. But yeah, just explore the chain. Have a read through the release notes. They can be quite boring, but we try and they try and highlight it in a way that you can see, obviously the features and changes and so on, and also bug issues that have been resolved. So, it's good to have a bit of a read of it and then play around and do your day-to-day processing. Ensure testing is done. So we do go to the effort of getting a sandbox for all of our clients. We have to request that from Mayab. We think it's essential that you do have that option to be able to test and just itemize. So, don't be scared of the sandbox. It's like a test environment. You can go and do some weird and wonderful things in there and play around with the system. So typically the sandbox is only available for about 2-3 weeks, I think, after the upgrade. Correct, Mark?
It's just 2 to 3 days, mate.
Oh, 2 to 3 days. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. I knew it was something. I knew it was a 2 and a 3. So about 2 to 3 days after the upgrade, the sandbox is still available. So you've got a small window. So play early in the sandbox, and then 2 or 3 days after that, it's shut down. So, and then any batch processing must be completed prior to the upgrade as well. So that's probably a key one there, Mark. Like making sure that if you've got any batch processing, do it prior to the upgrade.
Yep.
Cool. Has anyone got any questions that they want to ask? It'd be great if we can hear from some of our attendees to ask any questions so that they feel that they're getting some value out of these sessions. No? Nicole, you're always good for a question.
Why do you always pick on me? You picked on me last month. Not really.
No?
Not
Okay.
really. I've just sent the team some of those updates that you guys have listed, but yeah, a lot of it isn't probably applicable to us. I don't believe.
Okay, Eric, what about you, Eric? I know you joined a little bit later, so you missed out on some of the content around the demand, the distribution resource planning.
Nothing from us. But it will be good to get a list of the resolved issue if we
Yep.
can. Yeah.
No worries. We can what we can do is we'll send out a feedback form after this session. I'll get Mark to send over the release notes to over to Kenneth, who's our marketing guy, and he'll send that out in the with the survey.
Thanks.
Just take a note, guys, that the rollout for this upgrade will start from February this year.
Yeah. So we'll be busy over the next couple of months doing the upgrades. But yeah, I mean, like the generic inquiry ones, I think for majority of clients, that would be one that, you know, you want to hop on and have a look at. You know, if you're taking two generic inquiry screens out to Excel because it's just easy to get information, this is an opportunity where you can, you know, if you're scared of making a generic inquiry screen from scratch and you want to use two that you've already got and combine those, that's one that's applicable for all of our clients. That's a big one there. Well, before everyone jumps off, just to let you know that we're already planning the next one, which is going to be in February, and that'll be around sort of this mid-month sort of period on a Thursday at 10 o'clock. We're keeping it at the same time, same period throughout that period, over the next 12 months. And the next one will be on ProSpend, which is another AP. It does do AP automation, but they are very, very strong in expense recovery. And so there's some really good features that will come out of that. But yeah, look, thank you for your time. Happy New Year, and hope this year's successful. And if you need to reach out to us, there's our contact details there for you.
Yep.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.